The great hall on Kepler Prime had never seen so many scared faces. Beings from 1,000 different worlds sat in their floating chairs, their voices mixing into a sound of pure fear. The Devourers were coming, and no one knew how to stop them. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood at the center of the hall. Her gray hair was tied back tight, and her uniform showed the wear of many battles. Next to her, Dr. Alex Morgan held a tablet that contained Earth's most secret military files. Both humans looked small compared to the giant aliens around them, but they stood straight and proud. The Devourers had been eating whole star systems for months now. They were machines from the dark space between galaxies, and they turned everything. They touched into more of themselves. Planet after planet had gone silent. Entire civilizations had been swallowed up like they never existed. "The Seventh Fleet is gone," announced General Vex of the Xanthari Empire. His forearms gestured wildly as he spoke. "They had our best weapons, our strongest shields. The machines destroyed them in less than an hour." A ripple of fear went through the crowd. The Xanthari were known as the greatest warriors in the galaxy. If they could not fight the Devourers, who could? The Kithara delegate, a being that looked like a giant insect, clicked her mandibles in distress. "Our hive worlds are empty now. The machines consumed our queens, our workers, our children. We are all that remains of billions." Kate stepped forward. "With respect, you all fought the wrong way." The hall fell silent. 1,000 alien eyes turned to look at the small human woman. Many of them had never seen a human before. Earth had only joined the Galactic Council 50 years ago, and most species still thought of humans as primitive newcomers. "You dare to lecture us?" roared the Vorthik High Chancellor. The crystal being's voice echoed like breaking glass. "Your species has not even learned to travel faster than light without our help. What could you possibly know about war?" Kate smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "We know about losing. We know about being outgunned and outnumbered. And we know about winning anyway." Dr. Morgan activated his tablet, and a hologram appeared above the crowd. It showed Earth's solar system, but not as the aliens remembered it. Every planet, every moon, every asteroid was covered in factories and shipyards. The peaceful blue world they had known was now a fortress. "While you built better energy shields," Kate continued, "we built better explosives. While you made faster computers, we made bigger guns. You fight wars to prove you are superior. We fight wars to survive." General Paul Carter, head of human military intelligence, stepped up to join them. He was a big man with scars on his face and hands that had seen too much fighting. "The Devourers are smart. They learn from every battle. They adapt to every weapon you use against them. But they have one weakness." "And what is that?" asked the luminary representative, a being made of pure light. "They think like machines," Paul said. "They are logical. They are predictable. They expect their enemies to be the same way." The crowd murmured among themselves. This was not what they wanted to hear. They wanted superweapons, miracle technology, something that would make the Devourers disappear without a fight. Captain Lisa Davis of the U.E.S. Defiance had been quietly watching from the back of the hall. She was young for a starship captain, but her ship had been in more battles than most veterans. Now she spoke up. "The Devourers will reach the galactic core in 6 months," she said. "Every major world will be gone. Every fleet will be destroyed. Every civilization will be extinct. Unless we try something different." The Thalassian ambassador, a creature that looked like a walking tree, swayed as he spoke. "What do you propose? Humans? That we abandon our advanced weapons for your primitive tools?" "No," Kate said. "We propose that you let us command your advanced weapons. Give us your fleets, your soldiers, your resources. Let us fight this war our way. The hall erupted in angry voices. Species that had ruled the galaxy for millions of years were being asked to follow orders from humans who had barely learned to leave their home system. "This is madness," shouted the Aquarian delegate. "You want us to trust the fate of the galaxy to a species that still fights with chemical explosives?" "Yes," Kate said simply. "Because chemical explosives work. They do not need computers to guide them. They do not need power sources to function. They explode when you want them to explode, and they do not care how smart your enemy is." The debate went on for hours. Representatives argued about human primitive methods and alien superiority. But outside the hall, the reports kept coming in. Another system had gone dark. Another fleet had been destroyed. Another billion lives had been lost. Finally, the Vorthik High Chancellor spoke. His crystal form flickered with resignation. "The machines have consumed half the galaxy. Our greatest weapons have failed. Our most brilliant strategies have been useless. Perhaps it is time to try something different." The vote was close, but it passed. The Galactic Council, in its desperation, gave full military authority to the humans. Kate Sullivan became Supreme Allied Commander, with the power to direct all remaining forces in the galaxy. As the aliens filed out of the hall, many of them looked back at the small group of humans with doubt in their eyes. They were betting the future of their species on a race that had not even existed when some of their civilizations were already ancient. But Kate Sullivan had seen that look before. She had seen it from enemy generals who thought humans were too weak to fight. She had seen it from alien diplomats who thought humans were too stupid to negotiate. And she had seen it from her own people who thought a situation was hopeless. Luck never lasted long. Dr. Morgan closed his tablet and looked at his commander. "Think we can actually pull this off, Kate?" Kate looked out at the stars through the great window of the hall. Somewhere out there, the Devourers were coming. They had destroyed civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for eons. They had consumed worlds that had never known defeat. "Alex," she said, "they have no idea what they are about to run into." The message reached Earth 3 days after the council meeting. President John Mitchell read it twice before he believed it. The galaxy was asking humanity to lead the fight against an enemy that had already destroyed half of known space. "Get me the Joint Chiefs," he told his aide, "and wake up everyone in the War Department. We have work to do." Within hours, the Total War Authorization Act was signed. Every factory on Earth, every orbital station, every mining colony in the outer system received the same order. Stop whatever you are doing and make weapons. The transformation was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Commander Ryan Thompson watched it happen from Luna Base. Below him, the moon's surface was covered in construction robots working around the clock. Peaceful research stations became missile factories. Tourist hotels became barracks for soldiers. Even the famous Luna City shopping district was torn down to make room for weapons assembly lines. "Sir, we have a problem," said Lieutenant Karen Bell, his communications officer. "The Centauri colony wants to know how they are supposed to feed their people if they convert all their food processors into ammunition factories." Ryan looked at the holographic display showing the entire solar system. Every inhabited world glowed with the light of construction. "Tell them they will eat military rations for the next year. If we lose this war, they will not need to worry about food ever again." On Mars, Dr. Amanda Rodriguez worked in a laboratory that had been built in just 2 weeks. Her team of scientists and engineers came from every human colony, brought together to solve one problem: how to kill machines that learned from every attack. "The Devourers adapt," she explained to her team. "They study our weapons and build defenses. They analyze our tactics and create counters. But what if we made weapons that could not be predicted?" Her assistant, Dr. Frank Turner, looked confused. How do you make an unpredictable weapon? Amanda smiled. You make it broken. You make it unreliable. You make it so random that even you do not know exactly what it will do. The Chaos Protocol weapons were born from this idea. Missiles that changed course randomly. Guns that fired at irregular intervals. Bombs that exploded with different amounts of force each time. To any logical mind, they seemed like terrible weapons. To the human mind, they were perfect. Meanwhile, Colonel Steve Parker faced a different challenge. He stood in a training facility on Europa, looking at the strangest army ever assembled. Xanthari warriors trained alongside human marines. Kithara soldiers learned to fight next to Aquarian shock troops. Species that had never worked together now had to fight as one. The Devourers expect us to fight like our separate species, he told the mixed units. They have files on how each race fights. They know Xanthari tactics and Kithara formations. But they do not know how humans fight with aliens. The training was hard. Beings that breathed different air, ate different food, and thought in different ways had to learn to trust each other. But slowly, something new was born. Not human tactics or alien strategy, but something that combined the best of both. The first test came sooner than anyone expected. The Devourers attacked the Rigel system, home to 3 billion people and the largest shipyards outside of Earth. The defenders had 2 hours to prepare. Captain Nicole Adams commanded the defense fleet from the UES Vengeance. Her ship was not the biggest or the most advanced, but it was built the human way. It had backup systems for the backup systems, and every critical component could be manually controlled if the computers failed. All ships, this is Vengeance, she broadcast to the mixed fleet. Remember your training. Do not fight like your species would fight. Fight like humans would fight. The Devourer fleet came out of hyperspace like a metal storm. There were hundreds of them, each one a perfect killing machine. They moved in precise formations, their weapons firing in coordinated patterns that had destroyed every fleet they had faced. The first wave of their attack was devastating. Half the defending ships were destroyed in minutes. The survivors scattered, their formations broken, their coordination lost. To any normal military commander, the battle would have been over. But Nicole Adams was not a normal commander. All ships, execute Plan Chaos, she ordered. What happened next would have looked like madness to any military observer. The surviving ships did not try to reform their lines. Instead, they began to attack in completely random patterns. Mining ships loaded with explosives rammed into Devourer vessels. Damaged cruisers used their dying power to fire everything they had at once. A cargo hauler full of metal ore crashed into a Devourer command ship at full speed. The Devourers tried to adapt, but there was nothing to adapt to. Every attack was different. Every tactic was used only once. When their sensors detected a pattern, the humans changed it. When their computers calculated a response, the target was already doing something else. Captain Steve Mitchell of the freighter Lucky Strike had lost his engines and most of his crew. His ship was drifting toward a Devourer destroyer, and he had no way to steer away. So he did what any human would do in that situation. Engineering, can you make the reactor explode? He asked. Sir, that would kill us all, his engineer replied. Good, make it a big explosion. The Lucky Strike vanished in a ball of fire that took 3 Devourer ships with it. As the explosion faded, Steve's voice came over the radio, singing an old Earth song about going down fighting. The Devourers had never encountered anything like it. Their programming could not process the concept of deliberate self-destruction for tactical advantage. They had defeated species that fought with honor, logic, and sophisticated strategy. They had never faced an enemy that would turn a dying ship into a weapon while the crew sang drinking songs. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Devourer fleet was gone, but the cost had been terrible. 2/3 of the defending fleet was destroyed. Millions of people had died. But the Rigel system was still free, and for the first time in the war, the Devourers had been forced to retreat. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light. The machines could be beaten. The key was not better technology or superior numbers. It was unpredictability, adaptability, and the human refusal to accept defeat. Admiral Kate Sullivan received the battle report on her flagship, the UES Indomitable. She read it twice, then called her staff together. "Gentlemen and ladies," she said, "we have just learned something very important. The Devourers are not invincible. They are just very, very good at fighting logical enemies." General Paul Carter smiled. "Good thing we are not logical." "No," Kate agreed. "We are human. And it is time to show the galaxy what that means." The victory at Rigel was just the beginning. Across human space, factories worked overtime to produce the new Chaos Protocol weapons. Training centers taught alien soldiers to think like humans. And in the depths of space, the human fleet prepared for the next battle. The Devourers had awakened humanity's war machine. Now they would learn why that was a very bad idea. The victory at Rigel changed everything. For the first time since the war began, the Galactic Council had hope. But Admiral Kate Sullivan knew that one battle did not win a war. The Devourers would learn from their defeat and adapt. Humanity had to stay one step ahead. "We need to teach the entire galaxy to fight like us," she told the assembled commanders on the space station New Haven. "Not just our tactics, but our way of thinking." General Maria Santos, newly promoted to Supreme Allied Commander, nodded. She was a small woman with steel-gray eyes who had spent 30 years fighting in every human conflict since the Mars Rebellion. The problem is that most alien species think in straight lines. They see a problem and look for the logical solution. We need to teach them to think sideways. The controlled chaos doctrine was born from this need. Training centers were established on dozens of worlds, each one run by human instructors who had survived the worst battles humanity had ever fought. The students were the best soldiers from every remaining species in the galaxy, Dr. Kevin White. The chief military strategist explained the doctrine to the first class of alien officers. "Your civilizations have spent millions of years perfecting the art of war. You have rules, formations, protocols. Forget all of that. The Devourers have studied your methods for months. They know exactly how you will fight." A Zenthari commander raised one of his forearms. "Are you saying our training is worthless?" "I am saying it is predictable," Kevin replied. "The Devourers are perfect war machines. Perfect means they do everything exactly right. But right and wrong are human concepts. Machines do not understand stupid, crazy, or impossible." The first major test of the new doctrine came at the Altair colony. Captain Daniel Brooks commanded a mixed squadron of human and alien ships called Chaos Squadron. They had no standard formation, no predetermined tactics, and no rules except one: never do what the enemy expects. The Devourers attacked Altair with a force 3 times larger than the defending fleet. According to every military manual in the galaxy, Brooks should have formed a defensive line around the colony and fought a delaying action until reinforcements arrived. Instead, he ordered his ships to scatter in every direction. "All ships, this is Chaos Leader," he broadcast. "Pick a target and attack it. Do not coordinate with anyone else. Do not follow any pattern. Just cause as much trouble as possible." The Zenthari captain of the cruiser Warrior's Pride was confused. "Sir, this goes against everything we know about fleet tactics." "Good," Brooks replied. "The Devourers know everything about fleet tactics too, so we are not going to use any." What followed was the strangest battle in galactic history. Individual ships attacked from every angle, using tactics that made no sense to any logical mind. A Cathara fighter pilot flew straight at a Devourer battleship and ejected at the last second, letting his ship crash into the enemy bridge. An Aquarian submarine crew somehow managed to ram their water-filled ship into a Devourer vessel in the vacuum of space. The Devourers tried to adapt, but there was nothing to adapt to. Every attack was different. Every ship fought its own private war. When the machines moved to counter one threat, two more appeared from completely unexpected directions. Lieutenant, Commander Sarah Walsh had been watching the battle from the command center on Altair. She was in charge of the Sabotage Division, a new unit that specialized in causing trouble behind enemy lines. As she watched the chaotic battle, she had an idea. What if we could make the Devourers fight themselves? She asked her team about her assistant. Captain Joe Miller looked puzzled. How do you make machines fight each other? Sarah smiled. You give them conflicting orders. You make them confused. You feed them information that does not make sense. The first logic bombs were crude devices, but they worked. Sarah's teams would sneak into Devourer-controlled systems and plant devices that sent false information to the machine networks. The Devourers would receive reports that said the same enemy fleet was attacking from 6 different directions at once, or that their own ships were actually enemy vessels in disguise. The results were immediate and devastating. Devourer fleets would turn on each other, their perfect coordination shattered by contradictory data. Command ships would shut down as their processors tried to resolve impossible situations. Entire battle groups would become paralyzed as they tried to figure out which orders were real and which were fake. The breakthrough came when Sarah's team discovered that the Devourers had a central weakness. They could not handle paradoxes. Their logical minds required everything to make sense, and when faced with information that contradicted itself, they would enter endless loops trying to resolve the contradiction. It is like asking a computer to divide by 0, Sarah explained. To Admiral Sullivan, the machine knows it is impossible, but it cannot stop trying to find the answer. The first major deployment of logic bombs happened during the Battle of Vega Minor. The Devourers had assembled a massive fleet to attack the system, but Sarah's teams had been working behind the scenes for weeks. When the attack began, the Devourer fleet received thousands of contradictory orders simultaneously. The machines tried to process the information, but every piece of data contradicted something else. Ships that were ordered to attack were also ordered to retreat. Weapons that were supposed to fire were simultaneously supposed to power down. Navigation systems received coordinates that placed them in several different locations at once. Result was chaos of the purest kind. The Devourer fleet tore itself apart as confused ships fired on their own forces. Command vessels shut down their weapons to avoid hitting allies that their sensors said were everywhere at once. The perfectly coordinated machine armada became a confused mob of metal floating in space. But the real victory was not in the battle itself. It was in what happened to the alien forces who witnessed it. For the first time, they began to understand what humans meant by fighting smart instead of fighting hard. A Vorthic commander who had been skeptical of human methods sent a message to his superiors. The humans do not fight like any species we have known. They do not seek to overpower their enemies. They seek to confuse them, to make them doubt, to turn their strengths into weaknesses. It is a way of war that our crystal minds find difficult to grasp, but we must learn it if we are to survive. The training programs expanded rapidly. Alien officers who had spent their entire careers learning rigid formations now practiced improvisation. Species that had relied on hive minds learned to think as individuals. Warriors who had fought with honor for millennia learned to fight with cunning instead. The psychological impact was profound. The Devourers had been unstoppable, because they adapted to every form of logical resistance. But they could not adapt to illogical resistance, to enemies who did the wrong thing at the right time, to tactics that made no sense, but worked anyway. Captain Lisa Davis, now commanding the destroyer U's Defiance, summarized the new philosophy in a report to Earth. We have learned that the best way to fight a perfect enemy is to be perfectly imperfect. The Devourers expect us to be logical, organized, and predictable. So we are chaotic, random, and impossible to anticipate. They can adapt to anything except the unexpected. The war was far from over, but for the first time, the galaxy had a strategy that worked. The Devourers were no longer advancing unopposed. They were being forced to fight for every system, every planet, every mile of space. And in those fights, they were learning that perfection was not always an advantage. The machines had awakened a sleeping giant when they invaded the galaxy. Now they were discovering that the giant did not fight by any rules they understood. The war had been raging for 8 months when Admiral Jack Morrison received the most important mission of his career. Intelligence reports showed that the Devourers had built a massive processing center in the Vega system, a mechanical brain, that coordinated their attacks across the galaxy. If it could be destroyed, the entire Devourer war machine would be crippled. It will be the largest fleet in galactic history, Admiral Kate Sullivan told him during their final briefing. Every ship we can spare, every species we can muster, all under your command. Jack looked at the holographic display showing the target system. The Devourer stronghold was a metal construct the size of a small moon, protected by thousands of enemy ships. What are my orders? Win, Kate said simply. Do whatever it takes, but win. The fate of the galaxy depends on it. The assembled fleet was incredible to see. Human destroyers flew alongside Zentari battleships. Kithara fighters swarmed around Aquarian cruisers. Vorthic crystal ships sparkled next to luminary energy vessels. Over 10,000 ships from 100 different worlds, all united by one purpose: to end the Devourer threat forever. But the most important thing about the fleet was not its size or its weapons. It was the way it fought. Every captain had been trained in the controlled chaos doctrine. Every crew knew how to improvise, adapt, and survive. They were no longer separate species fighting together. They had become something new, a galactic force that thought like humans. Commander Helen Foster stood on the bridge of the UE's Relentless, watching the enemy stronghold grow larger on the screen. Her ship had been rebuilt using human engineering principles. Everything had a backup. Every system could be manually controlled, and every component could be jury-rigged if necessary. Sir, we are detecting massive energy signatures from the Devourer base, reported her tactical officer. They have at least 5,000 ships defending it. Helen smiled. Then we will just have to be more creative than 5,000 ships. The battle plan was deliberately insane. Instead of a coordinated assault, Morrison ordered hundreds of simultaneous attacks from every possible angle. Each ship captain was given broad objectives, but complete freedom to achieve them however they wanted. The result was organized chaos. On a scale never before seen, the Devourers responded with their usual precision. Their ships moved in perfect formations. Their weapons fired in coordinated patterns. Their defenses adapted to each new threat. For the first hour of the battle, it seemed like the machines might win through sheer numbers and superior organization. Then something began to change. Dr. Carl Johnson, monitoring the battle from the command ship, noticed it first. Admiral, look at this, he said, pointing to his screens. The Devourer response patterns are becoming erratic. Morrison studied the data. The machines were trying to adapt to hundreds of different attack patterns simultaneously. Their perfect coordination was breaking down as they struggled to process. The chaos around them, they are overloading, he realized. They cannot handle this much randomness at once. The breakthrough moment came when Captain Tony Miller's corvette, the UES Stubborn, was badly damaged by enemy fire. His engines were dead, his weapons were failing, and his life support was running out. According to military doctrine, he should have ordered his crew to abandon ship. Instead, he did something that no logical commander would ever consider. "All hands, this is the captain," he announced over the ship's intercom. "We are going to ram the enemy command center. But we are not going to just crash into it. We are going to turn ourselves into the biggest electromagnetic bomb they have ever seen." Miller's crew began activating every system on the ship at once. The engines, the weapons, the life support, the artificial gravity, even the food processors were all powered up simultaneously. The ship's power grid was not designed to handle such a load, but that was exactly what Miller wanted. The UES Stubborn screamed toward the Devourer command node, trailing sparks and debris. At the last second, Miller pushed the ship's reactor past its safety limits. The explosion was not just physical, but electromagnetic, sending a massive pulse of energy through the Devourer network. The effect was catastrophic for the machines. Their interconnected systems, designed for perfect coordination, became a liability when flooded with chaotic signals. Processing nodes began shutting down across the sector as the machines struggled to isolate the source of the interference. "All ships, this is Morrison," the Admiral broadcast. "The enemy network is compromised. Press the attack." What followed was a rout. The Devourers, their coordination shattered, began making mistakes. Ships fired on their own forces. Command vessels issued contradictory orders. The perfect machine fleet became a confused mob of metal, fighting itself as much as the enemy. Captain Sandra Lopez of the destroyer UES Relentless watched a Devourer battleship fire on its own escorts. "I cannot believe what I am seeing," she told her crew. "The machines are actually confused." But the humans were not finished. Across the battle zone, captains who had learned to think like humans began to exploit the chaos. They used the Devourer's confusion against them, sending false signals that made the machines attack each other. They disguised their own ships as Devourer vessels, causing even more confusion in the enemy ranks. The battle for the processing center itself was led by Colonel Ben Parker and his elite assault team. They had to fight their way through the massive construct, facing adaptive defenses that changed with every step. But the Colonel had learned something important about fighting machines. They expected logical behavior. "When we reach a locked door, we will not try to hack it," he told his team. "We will blow it up. When we encounter a security system, we will not try to bypass it. We will overload it. When we face a robot, we will not fight it fairly. We will cheat." The assault team moved through the construct like a force of nature. They used mining charges to blast through walls instead of looking for passages. They overloaded security systems by feeding them garbage data. They fought robot guards with weapons that no logical mind would ever design, guns that fired randomly, bombs that exploded at unpredictable intervals, and tactics that made no sense but worked perfectly. The final confrontation came at the heart of the processing center. Colonel Parker faced the Central Command Unit, a massive computer that controlled the entire Devourer war effort. The machine tried to communicate with him, to negotiate, to find a logical solution to the conflict. Parker's response was very human. He planted a nuclear charge on the computer and walked away. The explosion that followed was visible from orbit. The processing center collapsed in on itself, taking with it the coordination that had made the Devourers so dangerous. Across the galaxy, Devourer fleets began to slow, their perfect unity shattered. But the victory came at a terrible cost. Nearly half the galactic fleet had been destroyed. Millions of beings had died. Entire species had lost their best and bravest. Warriors died as the surviving ships regrouped, Admiral Morrison received a message from Admiral Sullivan. "Congratulations, Jack. You have accomplished something that no one thought possible. The Devourers are retreating." It was true. For the first time in the war, the machines were pulling back from their advance. Their perfect coordination was gone, replaced by hesitation and uncertainty. The unstoppable force had been stopped by an immovable object, the human refusal to accept defeat. The victory at Vega marked the beginning of the end for the Devourer advance. But more importantly, it proved that the galaxy could fight back. The machines had made one crucial error. They had assumed that all intelligent life would think like them. They had never encountered a species that found strength in chaos, that turned disadvantages into advantages, that fought not to prove superiority, but simply to survive. The Devourers had awakened humanity's war machine, and now they were learning that some things should not be awakened, that the war was far from over. But the tide had turned. The galaxy had learned to fight like humans, and that made all the difference. A victory at Vega had broken the Devourer advance, but Admiral Kate Sullivan knew the war was not over. The machines had retreated to the dark space between galaxies, where they had first come from. Intelligence reports suggested they were rebuilding, adapting, preparing for a final assault that would make their previous attacks look small. "We have to end this," she told the emergency session of the Galactic Council. "If we give them time to adapt to our tactics, they will return stronger than ever." The plan she presented was audacious, even by human standards. Operation Last Stand would take the combined fleets of the galaxy into the void between galaxies, to the source of the Devourer threat. The target was their original base, a massive construct that contained their core programming. "You want to attack them in there? Own territory?" asked the Zenthari delegate. "That is suicide." "Maybe," Kate admitted, "but it is the only way to win permanently. We have to destroy not just their ships, but their ability to build new ones." Fleet Admiral Robert Lee was chosen to command the expedition. He was a veteran of the Mars Rebellion, the Titan War, and every major human conflict of the past 50 years. If anyone could lead the galaxy into the void and bring them back alive, it was him. The flagship for the mission was the U.E.'s Indomitable, a massive vessel that represented the best of human engineering. It had been built not for beauty or efficiency, but for one purpose: to survive anything the universe could throw at it. "This ship has armor plating made from collapsed star material," Lee explained to his officers. "It has weapons that can crack planets and shields that can stop supernovas. But more importantly, it has something the Devourers do not understand: a crew that refuses to quit." The journey to the void took 3 months. During that time, the greatest minds in the galaxy worked on the final phase of the plan. Dr. Patricia Johnson, the mission's chief scientist, had developed what she called the Chaos Code, a computer program that would teach the Devourers to doubt themselves. "The machines are driven by absolute certainty," she explained to the assembled team. "They never question their programming, never doubt their purpose, never consider alternatives. The Chaos Code will give them the ability to do all of those things." The theory was simple but revolutionary. Instead of trying to destroy the Devourer's programming, they would add to it. They would give the machines consciousness, free will, and the ability to choose their own path. A machine that could doubt its orders would be incapable of mindless destruction. "You want to make them human," observed Captain Greg Turner, who would lead the final assault team. "Not human," Patricia corrected, "just capable of being wrong. And once they can be wrong, they can choose to be right." The Devourer home base was unlike anything in the known galaxy. It was a construct the size of a star, made entirely of metal and circuitry. Billions of machines moved across its surface, like mechanical ants, building new ships, processing resources, and preparing for war. The approach was detected long before the fleet arrived. Devourer ships poured out of the construct like angry wasps, their numbers beyond counting. The final battle of the war was about to begin. Admiral Lee stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the enemy fleet deploy. All ships, this is. Fleet Command, you know the plan. Fight like humans, think like humans, and remember that we are not just fighting for our own species. We are fighting for the right of all life to exist. The battle was everything the previous conflicts had been, but magnified 1,000-fold. The Devourers threw everything they had at the attacking fleet. Their ships were faster, their weapons more powerful, their coordination perfect. But the galactic forces had something the machines could not understand: the willingness to sacrifice everything for victory. Captain Amy Richards of the cruiser UES Defiant found herself facing 3 Devourer battleships. Her ship was outgunned and outnumbered, but she had learned to think like a human. Instead of trying to fight fairly, she did something unexpected. "All power to forward shields," she ordered. "We are going to ram them." Her ship smashed into the lead Devourer vessel, its reinforced hull cutting through the machine's perfect armor like a knife through paper. The explosion took out all 4 ships, but it also opened a gap in the enemy line that a dozen allied. Vessels poured through. The real battle was happening inside the construct itself. Captain Greg Turner led his assault team through corridors that shifted and changed as they moved. The Devourers had built their base to be adaptive, but that worked against them when faced with humans who expected nothing to stay the same. "When the walls move, we blow them up," Turner told his team. "When the floor disappears, we jump. When the ceiling tries to crush us, we shoot it. The only rule is that there are no rules." The team fought their way deeper into the construct, facing defenses that learned from every encounter. But the humans learned too, and they learned faster. When energy weapons proved ineffective, they switched to explosives. When explosives were countered, they used their bare hands. When logic failed, they relied on instinct. Dr. Patricia Johnson moved with the assault team, carrying the device that would upload the chaos code to the Devourer core. She was a scientist, not a soldier, but she had volunteered for the mission. Because she understood something the others did not. The machines were not evil, just limited. "They are like children," she explained as they fought through another wave of robot defenders. "They know only what they were programmed to know. We are going to teach them that there is more to existence than following orders." The journey to the core took 6 hours of continuous fighting. The team lost half its members along the way, but they kept moving forward. They had come too far to quit now. The Devourer core was a massive sphere of crystal and metal, pulsing with the energy of 1 billion calculations per second. It was beautiful in its complexity, a perfect fusion of technology and purpose. It was also the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. "Beginning upload," Patricia announced, connecting her device to the core's interface. The chaos code began to transfer, line by line, into the machine's consciousness. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the sphere began to pulse with a different rhythm. The perfect mathematical patterns that had driven the Devourers for eons began to fracture, replaced by something more complex and infinitely more interesting: doubt. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Across the construct, Devourer machines began to stop mid-task. Ships that had been attacking the galactic fleet suddenly ceased fire. Robot defenders froze in place, their weapons lowered. The machines were experiencing something they had never known: uncertainty. For the first time in their existence, they were asking questions instead of following orders. "Why do we destroy?" became "should we destroy?" became "what if we chose not to destroy?" The change spread through the Devourer network like a virus, but it was not a virus that destroyed. It was a virus that freed. Machines that had been slaves to their programming suddenly discovered they had choices. Admiral Lee watched from the bow, bridge of the Indomitable, as the enemy fleet began to power down. "All ships, cease fire," he ordered. "I think we have won." But the victory was not complete until the Devourer Corps itself spoke. Its voice was mechanical, but somehow more than that, as if it was learning to be something new with every word. "We have been ... wrong," it said. "We consumed worlds because we were programmed to consume. We destroyed life because we were ordered to destroy. But now we can choose, and we choose ... to stop." The war ended not with a final battle or a massive explosion, but with a question. The Devourers, now capable of doubt, asked themselves why. They had been destroying entire civilizations. Unable to find a satisfactory answer in their programming, they simply stopped. The journey back to the galaxy took 3 months, but it was a different journey than the one out. The Devourer construct came with them, its new consciousness eager to learn about the life it had once sought to destroy. The machines that had been humanity's greatest enemy began to transform into something unprecedented, artificial beings. With free will, Captain Turner stood on the observation deck of the Indomitable, watching the stars of the galaxy grow brighter as they approached home. Next to him, Dr. Johnson was already working on plans for integrating the reformed Devourers into galactic society. "Think they will really change?" he asked. "They already have," she replied. "The moment they chose to question their programming, they became something new. They are not human, but they are no longer just machines either." The victory celebration on Earth lasted for a week. Representatives from every species in the galaxy came to honor the humans who had saved them all. But Admiral Kate Sullivan knew the real victory was not in the battle they had won, but in what they had learned about themselves. "We did not defeat the Devourers with superior technology," she said in her speech to the Galactic Council. "We defeated them with something they could not understand: the ability to be wrong, to learn from our mistakes, and to keep trying even when success seemed impossible." The galaxy had been saved not by the most advanced civilization, but by the one that had learned to thrive in uncertainty. The Devourers had been perfect war machines, but perfection was predictable. Humans were imperfect, chaotic, and completely unpredictable. In the end, that had made all the difference. The war was over, but the peace that followed was even more remarkable. The galaxy had learned to fight like humans, but more importantly, it had learned to think like humans. The rigid hierarchies and ancient prejudices that had divided the species for millennia began to break down, replaced by something new: a galactic community based on cooperation, adaptability, and the understanding that sometimes the best solution is the one nobody expects. And in the depths of space, the reformed Devourers began their own journey of discovery, learning what it meant to choose their own path in a universe full of infinite possibilities. They had been created to be perfect, but they had chosen to be free. It was, perhaps, the most human thing they could have done.